How can you be so inhuman?
You will suffer the hammer of God!
God, you say? Now this is intriguing. How much longer do you think your God plans to wait before unleashing his fury? Just how many thousands of lives must I take before he decides to strike me down?
You're a monster.
Open your eyes. God is nothing more than a construct created by man to inspire fear and promote order. If you wish to see me struck down for all these atrocities, use your own hands to do so, not God's.
Yo, shalom family. This is your boy. I'm back again with another video, and this one is going to be titled "Who Were the Ishvalans?" Okay, so judging by that beginning 30 seconds clip, you already know what to expect. Bradley was laying the fire down on them, weren't he? He was really going in, but we're going to explain, at least from my viewpoint, who the Ishvalans were in ancient history, or who they're supposed to be a mock-up of. All right, so and also from my standpoint of who the character of Scar is an allusion to, which is the character you're seeing on the screen now. For the sake of this video, I will not be doing an esoteric or left-hand breakdown. This will be purely from a historical and right-hand point of view. So for those of you confused, like, what the hell is he talking about, on left hand or right hand? So basically, brothers and sisters who read the scriptures, you already know that basically the Most High controls the left hand path, which is wickedness or evil, and the right hand path, which is righteousness or good. If you don't understand this concept, you know, nothing I will expound on will make sense. So in the near future, I will be doing an esoteric breakdown of different genres, including this one right here, because it has a lot of esotericism in it, heavily steeped in esotericism. But like I said, for the sake of this video, we'll stick to the right hand path, okay? Because there's a lot of biblical elements that they take from the show as well. All right. So, okay, let's get started. In FMA lore, the Ishvalans were a race of people that lived off the land, and they were peaceful people. They believed in God and followed the laws, statutes, and commandments of the highest power, or of their highest power. Does that sound familiar? I hope it does. So just based off of my viewpoint, the Ishvalans are undoubtedly based off the Hebrew Israelites of the scriptures. I mean, it's obvious, you know, the name, the color, quote unquote, of the people, the attire, even their beliefs go hand in hand with the people of the scriptures. Like, once I break down the scriptures, rather, and once you see for yourself, you will come to understand that there's no mistake. These people know exactly what they were putting out and who these characters in this false race of people in the show were a mock-up of, like I said before. So, also on the side note, most nations of people who settle in a particular area name the land after the nation. For example, Israel, the Israelites. Iber or Iberians, which is just another name that means Hebrew. Okay, Ishval or Ishvalan. Okay, do you see the connections here? Because they want to make it known, they're making it evident, they're making it plain, right? So I did some research, and the creator, Miss Hiromu Arakawa, hope I'm pronouncing that right, has a deeper level of understanding of who and what she's actually depicting. So a lot of the times in the upper echelon, these creators like Miss Hiromu, they don't just make things, they don't come out with ideas out of thin air, okay? They pull from resources, they pull from stories, and you know, they pull from things of the actual world. That's how stories get created, okay? Nobody in the history of man has just created something out of thin air. It's always taken inspiration from something that already existed. Okay, I hope you guys understand that. All right. So they're gonna come up with all these excuses about, oh well, I just thought this color looked really cool, or no, okay, no, that's bullshit. They took inspiration from another source and applied it to whatever story they were trying to tell. Okay, and as you look deeper, and as I'm about to bring out, a lot of these stories are telling the same thing. They're telling the same story over and over again, just with different mediums and maybe a different form and character design, but it's all the same thing. It boils down to the same thing. Okay, so let's continue. So I want to bring out a point on the character Scar, his quote unquote character development, which is really character degradation in my view. So why do I state that? Because throughout the series, Scar was handing out righteous judgment left and right. I mean, he was the man was going in, okay, and it was for a good reason. His people were essentially castigated, and they were persecuted. Okay, I mean, this has happened in real life. We already know the group of people who were castigated and persecuted. There was actually numerous amounts of people. I'm not just going to say it's limited to one group of people, but this group of people in particular, they're trying to make it evident and known through the contrasting character models of who they're actually representing. Okay, so I mean, he was destroying the ones responsible for the destruction of his people. His character starts to degrade after he accepts the globalization narrative. So I'm not going to go too deep into this, but globalization, that whole mindset and doctrine that's not biblical. People like to take excuse me, certain scripture from Matthew and Luke, where Yahushua, which is quote unquote what they call Jesus, right? But his real Hebrew name is Yahushua. All right, where Yahushua states that he came to save the world. When you break down the etymology of the world in that scripture, it goes back to Israel, because in the previous chapter or the previous book in Luke, he says, "I have not come but for the lost sheep of Israel." Okay, roughly paraphrasing, but he's only come for Israel, his nation of people. Do you see why I'm making this connection between Scar's character, what he's supposed to represent? So I'll show you the scriptures and everything too. We'll get to the scriptures as per usual later on. But for right now, I want to lay out the groundwork of why I'm asserting the things that I'm asserting. Okay? So another scripture, just roughly paraphrasing, is Yahushua states that he's not come to bring peace on earth, but a sword. Okay? A sword cleaves into it, divides, it separates. Right? So this whole thing about nations being one with each other, that's bullshit. That's not biblical. That's not the right way, because if you look at how the world is set, nations of people naturally gravitate to their own nation. Okay, intermixing and mingling with different nations, that was never supposed to be a thing unless that nation of people were to be under subjugation to the other nation of people and take on their ideals, traits, philosophies, laws, statutes, commandments, you see. So they inadvertently get grafted into that nation and become one with that nation over time. So essentially, they still are being one nation, okay? Even though there's multiple nations, the nation that ends up conquering the other nation has to go into subjugation of the other nation. That's rulership. That's all it is. And not to go on a tangent, but we're in rulership right now, okay? But moving on, getting back to the point. So his people are not free in their own land, right? Before they had their own land, they had their own resources. They were doing things, within the confines or bounds of their own nation and beliefs. But it wasn't until the Amestrians, aka Americans, okay, they came in and conquered or came in and persecuted these people, right? Just for the sake of quote unquote science in the show. They wanted to experiment on these people, because just like with the Israelite people, which are the Negroes, the Indians, which is the Native Americans, Negroes, Latinos, Hispanics, so forth and so on. Those make up the Israelite people, at least in this day and age. And I'll back up scripture to what I'm saying as well. But they persecuted these people because they had the highest spiritual resonance for what they called the Philosopher's Stone. Okay, that's what they were trying to create in the show. So in order to create this Philosopher's Stone, they had to destroy these people and use their spiritual essence to create the stone. This is very revelatory, because in real life, so-called black people are being persecuted for the same reason. They're just not telling you that. That's why there's unprecedented numbers of killings, ritualistic killings, and everything else going on, because so-called black people, they have the highest spiritual resonance. That is why, they're doing all these things, and it's because we are under the law, statutes, commandments of the Most High. We have been imbued with that spirit from the Most High. You see, that is why we've been persecuted and hated throughout the world. People, they can't seem to fathom or understand why that is. Well, this is why. You go back to the scriptures and they'll tell you. So let's talk about Scar's actual character design. All right. So if we look at the screen, we see that he has dark skin, red eyes. I don't know if you can quite make that out, but he has red eyes. I mean, I'll put some more pictures up here if it isn't evident already. And white hair. And, that's a very interesting character design, something that isn't really seen all that much in animated mediums. But there is a source, okay? There's a source from where they took that character, that specific character design. And as a matter of fact, in the original Fullmetal Alchemist series, the creator, Miss Hiromu, she originally had the dark-skinned people have black hair and red eyes, okay? So in the revamped Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood series, she chose to depict them in the same way, but just change their hair color to white. Now, why is that? Well, let's go into it. Let's bring out the scriptures. Okay. Now, I did pull this scripture off of looks like a Facebook screenshot website, so I do apologize for that. However, I do know where the verse came from, so I can still tell you the book that it came out of. So this is Revelations chapter 1, verse 14, and it reads, "His head and his hairs were white like wool, and white as snow. And his eyes were as a flame of fire." Verse 15, "And his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as a sound of many waters." Doesn't that sound very interesting? Isn't that very familiar to what we just looked at in terms of the character designs? I mean, it isn't too far-fetched to me. It seems like exactly where they got it. But let's read on, because this person seems to have a relatively high level understanding. They break it down, as how I would. So it says, Revelations means the revealing, and this is the revealing of Yahweh / Jesus. When John the Revelator saw him, he gives a detailed description. Correct. Now there are two things to gather from these verses. The first is the texture of Hamashiach's or Christ's hair, and the second is his skin color. When you read the beginning of the verse, his texture of hair is described as being like wool. Woolly hair is black hair. Yes, that is true. That is no known secret. Everybody should know that by now. Woolly hair means black hair. When you look at lamb's hair, because in the Bible it'll constantly compare our hair, or Yahweh's hair rather, to being woolly, like sheep's wool, very curly and coily and kinky, right? So it says, next it describes the skin color of Christ's feet. Keep in mind that your feet is the same color as the rest of your body. John describes it as being like brass. Now, brass is a derivative of brown. It is a copper color. Now, if you take a brown copper and burn it in a furnace or oven, it will turn jet black. So, the Hamashiach was a very dark-skinned man. Okay, he's a very dark-skinned man, but he was still also of the Shemitic line, or the seed line of David, which goes back to the Israelites, which are of the Negro races. Now, I have proof of that as well. But let's continue. It says, as a matter of fact, if you take anything and burn it in the oven, it will turn black. Correct. Okay. So let's move on to the next verse. Okay. Now this is Daniel chapter 10, verse 5, and it reads, "Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins were girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude." So let's break this down. His face as the appearance of lightning, that means he had a very fierce countenance, a very stern look. Christ was known to be a very austere man, okay? It says in the scriptures he was a very austere man. What does austere mean? Austere means very serious, very stern. He's very strict. He was not playing games. Okay, that false Christ that they show, the image of Esau or the white man with blonde hair and blue eyes, that's false. Okay, He's not smiling. Christ was never known to be a very happy-go-lucky man, okay? As it says in the scriptures, he's very austere, had a very mean countenance, you know, and not mean in terms of mean-spirited, but just serious. He was about his business. It tells you in the scriptures, I'm about my Father's work, okay? He was no nonsense, all right? And his eyes as lamps of fire. So his eyes were he had, like, this goes into the serious countenance. He had eyes as if they could burn through you, they can see through you. Okay, he's very serious, very, very strict, very stern. But this is why they take the appearance of Christ, right, and they applied it to the Ishvalans. Okay, that's where that came from. The red eyes, the white hair, the dark skin. Okay, I hope you guys are seeing this connection. All right, it's very plain and evident. And it says, and his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words were like the voice of a multitude. So the voice of a multitude means his voice carried. It's very deep. Okay, it carried. It had a lot of weight. Have you ever heard somebody with a very deep voice and it just reverberates through you, like the voice of many men, a multitude of people? That's what his voice sounded like. It carried. It had depth in it. Okay, so let's continue reading what I assume this is a brother's breakdown. He says, now Daniel described Christ similar to John. So this is two different prophets, or two different men, who prophesied the Hamashiach's appearance through a vision. It says, the garment that he wore was linen and the color beryl green, with a golden girdle, letting you know that Hamashiach wore the best clothes possible, not dirty, cut up clothes like they have these imposters portraying him on vision, or on television. Correct. You know, Christ wore, you know, at least in that vision, he wore a top of the line clothes. Okay, he was not dirty. Even while he walked on the earth, he wasn't dirty. Okay, he wore linen clothes, you know, clean cut linen clothes. All right. It says his face was as lightning because he was dealing with the wisdom and knowledge of the Bible. Absolutely, absolutely. Very stern countenance. He was serious. As for his arms and feet, the key word is color, and remember, as in Revelation, as if they burn in a furnace. So his arms and feet are a dark brown color. As far as his voice, when Christ spoke, he didn't speak softly all the time as he is portrayed in movies. He spoke with authority when he taught the word of the Bible. Read Luke chapter 19, verses 20 through 21. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, this whole notion of Christ being this, you know, what they portray as a weak, effeminate man, that's far from the contrary. Far from the contrary. Okay, Hamashiach was a very stern, austere man. You know, he didn't play a lot of games. All right, if he was the physical manifestation of the Most High, why would the Most High be a weak, or be portrayed as a weak man? That makes no sense. That's blasphemy, as a matter of fact. So let's continue. Let's see. So now, if Christ was a dark-skinned man when he walked the earth, what color would he be if he walked the earth today? Okay, that's the whole point. And you know, just to further expound, he was of a certain seed line. He was from the line of Shem, like I said, which is the Negroes. Okay, and I'm about to bring that out right now, but he was from the Davidic seed line. Okay, which came from Judah, which ultimately ties back to the Israelites, which is of the Negroid races. All right, so specifically, he will be a Negroid man walking the earth, not just any dark-skinned race of people, because there's a difference. All right, and this is from the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, and this is the account of Ham, or the definition of Ham, and it says here, a son of Noah and father of Cush, Egypt, Put, and Canaan. So these are the other dark-skinned races of people, right? It says, see further on each of these four. While they may have all been dark-skinned, they were not the forefathers of the Negro races, but rather peoples associated with Egypt and the north of the continent of Africa. The Egyptians thought of Canaan as one of their provinces even until very late times. So this is evidence right here. This isn't me just saying stuff or talking on the side of my ass, okay? I've done research on these things, you know. So we have confirmation here that the Negroes were not the Egyptians the Canaanites, or the African tribes. So the Nilotic tribes that you see today, the different African tribes, they're not the same as Negroes. Okay, so you so-called black people will keep claiming you are African. You are not. Okay, you need to do your due diligence and do your research. You are separated. That is, they don't even acknowledge you. Okay, most Africans don't acknowledge you as part of them. All right, they know the difference. They know the tribe that they herald from. All right, as a matter of fact, you know, we as a people, yes, we did migrate over in Africa, but during the transatlantic slave trade, we were sold by Africans. And no, they were not our own people. So stop with that rhetoric too. All right, our own people did not sell our own people. It was Africans who sold Israelites. Okay, so let's make sure we get history correct before we start blurting stuff out. All right, so this is even further proof, expounding on the fact that the Negroes were different from the other dark races of people. Okay, this is Exodus chapter 2 verse 11 through 22, and it reads, "And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied on he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And he said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me, as thou killedest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by the well. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priests of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and filled the trough of the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them, and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, How is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, An Egyptian delivered us. I'll read it again. And they said, An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, And where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. Okay, so the reason why I read that entire thing was to lay out the groundwork and lay out the point that throughout this entire story, not only did it differentiate between the Hebrews and the Egyptians, but that Moses fled further into the city of Midian, and they could not tell an Egyptian from a Hebrew from just the way they looked. Okay, they couldn't tell them apart. It's just like today, for the most part, you cannot tell the different races of people apart unless they have certain distinct features, but for the most part, you can't tell them apart. So he was able to blend in, okay, even though he was Hebrew. All right, so that's why they assumed he was Egyptian, because he lived there and he helped them out. So that should further expound upon that point, but we're about to keep going in deeper. This is Deuteronomy 28 and 37, and it reads, And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Okay, first of all, who were the people that were sold into Egypt the first time? It was the Israelites, correct? And then now the second time, this is a prophecy. So the second time they're sold into Egypt is talking about the Americas, right? Because when you look at the etymology of the word Egypt, it breaks down into bondage, right? So the slaves were sold into bondage into another land by ships. Who were the only people on the planet Earth who were sold by way of ships? Come on now. And it says here at the very end, and no man shall buy you. It doesn't mean that they don't buy them physically, but buy you goes into, save them, buy their salvation, get them out of the bondage, get them, make them free from bondage, right? No man shall come and save you, up until the appointed time, obviously, when the Hamashiach comes. But make no mistake, so-called black people, you are in bondage in this society. This is just a neatly nice packaged slavery that we're in right now. But you're in bondage, okay? You've been in bondage ever since you've been on those ships. All right? So that's who it's speaking about. It's speaking about the Negroid races of today, who were sold through the transatlantic slave trade by many nations and scattered abroad. Okay? And let me add this. The reason that this happened or this occurred was because Israel's disobedience to the Most High. See, this Deuteronomy goes to the curses. At least these specific verses go into the curses. Because when Israel was choosing to be wicked, the Most High laid out curses. And he told them, if you decide to disobey me, these are the ramifications of your actions. If you decide to go off and worship idol gods, perform wickedness, fornication, idolatry, again, then this is what will happen to you. And he laid it out in the law, statutes, commandments. All right. But our nation, they're very hard-headed hard-headed people, right? They're very stiff-necked people. So they didn't care. They went off and did their own thing and committed wickedness. And that's why the nation of Israel is in the state that it's in right now. Okay. I hope you guys understand that. I'll probably be doing a further breakdown on this concept or on these things in other videos. But for right now, I just want to stay on topic of who the Ishvalans and aka who were the real Israelites, okay, and how it connects and correlates to today. Okay, so now I just want to go further into some pop culture or some anime mediums that display what I've been talking about or trying to communicate throughout the entire video. Okay, so here we have Scar and his brother depicted with white hair, red eyes, and bronze skin or burnt bronze skin. All right. And if we continue looking, we have here Mirko. Same concept, white hair, red eyes, and bronze skin. All right. These people, I'm telling you, these people know who you are. Okay. They're mocking you because you don't know. You don't do your research, but this is where they get it from. Okay. There's no coincidence. There's no such thing. And people are going to say, oh, well, that's a coincidence that it looks like that. No. There's no such thing as a coincidence. Okay. And the root word coincidence is coincide, right? That means to be one with, synchronicity. So there's no such thing as coincidence, man. Okay? And here we have Son Goku, right? Okay, he's depicted the same way. White hair, red eyes, bronze skin. And the reason why I put this here is because Akira Toriyama came out on record stating that his original design for Super Saiyan was going to be white hair, red eyes, and dark skin. Those are his words, not mine. Those are his words, okay? So, we have another artist rendition of the same thing, but, the fierce countenance, red eyes, white hair, bronze skin. You guys are going to come, in these last days, you're going to come to realize that these people, the upper echelon, who are working in the occultic sphere, they know all of these things. They know more about you than you know of yourself, and they worship you. They worship you as gods. That's why they depict you in these forms, okay? And we have Beast Gohan as well. Same thing. He went ahead and decided to tell on himself and put the character in there, put the actual design that he originally created, quote unquote created, and put it in the media. All right, white hair, red eyes, bronze skin. Like, it's it's completely evident, man. It should be evident at this point. Okay, so. I think that about wraps it up. Let's cover all bases as to why I assert the Ishvalans are in fact the Israelites of the scriptures. Okay? If you don't know by now, then you don't have eyes to see and ears to hear. Alright, but thank you all for watching the video. I truly, truly appreciate it. Hopefully for those who hear and get inspired by the word, they can turn back to the Most High, because that's all this is about. That's all I create these series about, is to try and get brothers and sisters to turn back to the Most High, because that's all that matters. Okay? So, y'all be blessed, and I'll see you later.
Ishvalans! Have you abandoned your god? would leave him so easily? Is your God so readily lost to your people? Is he? Hearing the Ishvalans civil war! When you were surrounded by nothing but despair! Surely somewhere in the darkest depths of your heart, you began to believe that there was no God in this world at all!